Welcome to Thunder Talk TV with Lightning Hair Lounge and Lifestyle Company, where we have bold conversations and maybe a little uncomfortable conversations, but they have to be had for your just well-being and to live an electric and bold lifestyle. So today I'm here with Gabi with two sisters, Pure Goods, and we're going to talk about our journey from transitioning to vegan, and then I keep saying overcoming veganism because it really felt like I overcame that. But really just deprogramming ourselves from the vegan lifestyle into more of that primal living carnivore, lots of meat and whole foods, and really how we felt while we were vegan and now how we feel not being vegan. And so I'll let Gabi introduce herself and share whatever you would like to share.
Okay. Hey, everyone. I am Gabi Moyer. I'm the founder and CEO of Two Sisters Pure Goods. Uh, we make completely organic, animal-based skincare, hair care, and a wonderful pet balm that's great for the four-legged kiddos, and I can dive into that stuff a little bit later. But years ago, so I think I was 17 when I took meat out of my diet, and that was a combination of things. So we grew up in a household where you cleaned the plate before you left the table, and oftentimes that meant you were cleaning like a KFC chicken bone or something like that, and it just never vibed with me. So it was a bit of a rebellion, but also in all sincerity, it was a lot of like most of my family and everybody around me was so unhealthy and sick and suffering, and like we were constantly sick as kids. So I just knew something isn't right here, and kind of, headed down that path, just the elimination process. So it was vegetarian, and then it was vegan, and then back to vegetarian, and then back to meat here where we are now. So
Yeah. So then were you like sick and struggling and that's when you were like, okay, I'm gonna go vegan or like vegetarian to vegan?
yeah, so my siblings and I mean, from the womb, we had eczema and autoimmune issues and allergies and trouble with obesity. And like I got my period when I was 9 years old.
Wow.
Just like developed way too soon. So did my sister. Yeah, and just looking around, I'm like, okay, my body's being a little bit different than everyone else's. So what's going on here? And then around that time, let's see, it was probably 2013-ish, was when a lot of the plant-based conversation was kind of starting to be had. It definitely wasn't as big as it is now. Um, but I was fortunate in that fact because I grew up in Sharpsville, Pennsylvania, which is a little teeny tiny, rural area. And there was no like Beyond Burgers, there was no restaurants offering vegan options, or vegetarian options. So for me, it was really just like I took the meat out and was left with Whole Foods on a good day, some ultra processed stuff, here and there. But it was very different than kind of the landscape right now. And because of that, my health got better quickly. Like I was able to manage my weight, and I had, better periods. I had more energy. I was able to do sports. Um, in retrospect, I realized that wasn't necessarily not eating meat, but not eating like factory farm, hormone pumped, grain fed, processed, fried in seed oil meat. Um, but at that point, I didn't know any of those words or any of those things.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then in 2017, so about 4 years later, I moved across the country to Portland, Oregon, where the vegan scene was huge. It was so easy to do it. Literally every place you went in had really encouraged a vegan option. So that was when I went like full on vegan because it just like wasn't an obstacle anymore. Um, but that unfortunately also included a lot of, like the fake meats and the meat substitutes, a lot of even dairy. I remember one of the things that like broke my vegan spell. I was dumping some, I think it was like Follow Your Heart Parmesan cheese on my food, and I spun it around and I read it, and I was like canola oil and this and this and this, and I was like, this can't be better than cheese. Like it just, like it like shook me at that point. Um, and then I kind of started asking some different questions that I hadn't asked in a long time. But you talk about like deprogramming, and that's really what it was. I think in so many different like styles of life or convictions that come upon us in the beginning, where we have this sincere striving to be better or to learn something, and then we get into a pattern and like we kind of put the blinders on and stop doing what it was for in the first place.
Yeah, that's so true.
you know? And so my health started to reverse again, and I started to have hormonal issues and really tough periods and just tired all the time. Couldn't keep my weight. Like it was going up and down like in like 30-pound ranges, like
Wow.
substantial.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I noticed that when I was really sad, I'd want cheese. Like when I was in like depressive bouts or really lonely or something happened, like I just craved cheese, and sometimes I would like sneak it. And I'd
Did
even
you feel so guilty?
like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like buy it with cash. So there'd be like, no, like you're never gonna find this.
No trace. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it was always just cheese. Ice cream wasn't really a problem because there was plenty of vegan ones. But if you gave me like a dairy ice cream, if I was in the right place, I would just take it. I'd be like, okay, whatever, one times. And then those little like bits and pieces started to add up. But the nail in the coffin for me, my fiance, when we started dating, he was like, cool, you can do what you want. But he was raised by a cattle rancher,
Mm,
on, in Idaho, that lifestyle. And he was like, I'm never going to do it. And in the beginning, I was like, okay, I'll have my salad and you have your steak. Um, but once I was looking at those things on his plate, it was like, that smells good. Well, maybe I can just have a bite. Or, well, we're not really having the same meal together. So like the pieces would come together. And it just kind of like naturally fell back. But now like everything is regulated for me. Like I have energy, and again, like my cycles are perfect, and I sleep and I have all this strength and mental clarity, and I don't need like 4,000 different supplements all day long to have,
yeah.
you know, the right medical outcomes. And just the more that I learned, I feel so grateful that he came into my life when he did, because it was really kind of the um I mean, I said nail in the coffin, but it was just like the support and the love and the shift. And the first person that wasn't also vegan in my life at that time, that was
Yeah.
like accepting of that. And I didn't have to like go get cash to buy cheese to know I could track it, So but and then now here we are. We're totally back, mostly carnivore. Um, but we do, so I really try to eat based on my cycle,
Okay.
which is like kind of the phase that I'm learning the most about right now. It is not as straightforward as with men, and it
Yeah.
adds a little bit more work. But for example, there's parts of your cycle where you are trying to make more progesterone, which requires carbohydrates to do.
Mhm.
There's parts of your cycle where you're more estrogen dominant and you can handle more cortisol, you can handle more stress, you can handle longer fasts or cold plunges or things like that. So that is where that initial, when I was 17, like 13 years ago, like something's wrong here and I have to do something different. It's evolved to this now, to where it's like, I've tried all these things. I've taken bits and pieces of what works and what doesn't. And now it's kind of in a place of really fine tuning to like actual optimal but I'm grateful for the exercise, because I feel like I fell into so many of those different programming things at different times. Because I don't know about you, but after I was vegan, I was like, I don't ever want a vegetable. I'm only eating meat. Like I went like totally the opposite way.
That's me right now. I'm like, I mean, I still fill my plate with veggies, but if there's an option, I'm like, no, I need meat. I do not want veggies. I want meat.
Yeah. I felt like I had like gotten out of prison or something. And I'm like, I want to do the exact opposite of
Yeah.
everything that I just did. Um, but it's finally coming to a place of balance now, where it's like, okay, I don't feel like I'm particularly vulnerable anymore, because I did walk so many of these different things. Um, and now it's at a place where I've had so many experiences of what my body feels like, that
Mhm.
now I know, like honestly, within like 20 minutes, now I know if I eat something, if I'm like tired or,
Yeah.
this or that,
Heavy.
and
Heavy.
then
Yeah.
put it all together. And I feel so fortunate for that, because I feel like so many people do not have that baseline, or really like they just feel terrible all the time
Yeah.
and they can't pinpoint like, what is this? What is that?
Yes.
Uh, so
Yeah. So we actually, I'm gonna grab it real quick. We have the oh yeah, so we created the Lightning Lifestyle Food Journal for that exact reason, because that was like my thing. I felt like crap all the time and I wasn't sure like what it was coming from, and my energy just, it was non-existent. And then through tracking my food, I was able to pinpoint exactly what was causing me issues. And then from there, that really like spiraled my, it was almost about a year and a half until I added meat back in. So I was like programmed so hard. Um, But and my reason why to not eat meat was very emotional because I have pet pigs. And so I was like, you don't eat your dog or your cat, so why am I eating pig? And it like really spiraled from there. So I was like, I had emotional ties to why I was not eating meat. And I would even tell people at the beginning, like, I'm not a healthy vegan. I'm just vegan for the animals, you know? And like,
Yeah.
you fall into that trap and you're following PETA and all of these things. And they're like programming. But whenever it got down to it and I was tracking, and yeah, I was like looking at the ingredients and like soybean oil, all these oils and stuff, it's just like it's in every single one of those things. No wonder I'm struggling so much.
Yeah.
And I always tell people like your symptoms are your food and your body talking to you. And so for I know you know this, but for anyone who's watching this that is struggling with bloatedness, brain fog, headaches, lack of energy, any of those things, abnormal periods, this is your body talking to you. And whatever you are putting in is coming out in the form of a symptom. And so, any of those things like extreme gassiness, bloatedness after you're done eating, those are not normal. The world makes them normal. The world makes pills for anti bloat or, all these supplements to put a band-aid on your symptoms, but to get to the root cause, it's truly tracking your food and making that lifestyle change for your entire lifestyle, for your well-being and your mind, your soul, your body, your emotional needs, everything.
Yeah.
So how long, okay, so you went vegetarian first, then vegan.
Yeah.
How long were you vegetarian before you went vegan?
4 years.
Okay, and then how long were you vegan for?
7, 8, 9, 6 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then you went veg again.
Yeah, but it was a quick transition because when I
Okay,
met Joshua, I was still vegan.
okay.
And then it was like maybe a month and a half of like, okay, I'll have eggs. And then I just was like, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
But and two, I love that you mentioned the emotional piece of it because I do think that comes up in a lot of different ways. I feel you on that. I actually just found this hat that I used to wear all the time that said eat fruits, not friends.
Yeah, I like that too.
Like I would preach that. I'm like, how could you? Like, I have 2 cats, 3 dogs, whatever.
Yeah,
I have 2 dogs and 3 cats, but with him, it like right before that, the last relationship before that, I was dating someone who was vegan and they were like strict, like almost violently, like can't even look at a slice of cheese vegan. So I think that had a lot to do with it coming out of a relationship that was so like that, where this person would like, and that was why I had to like buy cheese with cash, right? Like he was like a hawk watching every single thing. And it was such like a religion to him.
yeah,
So I think that I was so ready to just be like, okay, get away from me. Like I don't want any of
yeah,
this. But I do love that you speak to the compassion piece because I think that's huge for a lot of people. And I felt that at a lot of different times where it was like, well, this, especially factory farming and things like that. I'm like, I don't want to support this. Um, but I think what really set in for me, and I think Joe Rogan did this one to me, but where I started to realize for one, unless the majority of people are boycotting something, a boycott is not as powerful as voting
mm,
with a dollar.
yeah,
So if I want regenerative farms or sustainable practices, my buying food from those farms is more powerful than not buying animal products at all
yes,
because that feeds into that, right? And then Joe Rogan would get into like monocrop agriculture. He was the first person who made me think about that, about how many like insects and shrews and moles and all these different things die in the process of tilling hundreds of or thousands of acres, right, for corn, right, for one vegetable to be planted. And it's like, whoa, hold on. I wanted to save these things, and now, like hundreds, thousands of them are dying for a stalk of corn. Right. And then, and I think in one of your other episodes, you mentioned something about hunting. And I had that same feeling where I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go kill my food. I haven't done that yet.
I
Joshua,
haven't either.
yeah, Joshua has for us. But, and that was another thing where I started listening to a lot of podcasts from hunters, and they're like, we are the biggest conservationists. We buy a license and that goes to conserving this habitat. Or, if an animal's going to die in nature, it's going to freeze to death or starve to death or be mauled by another animal. But if I hunt it, it's going to die in seconds. And I'm
Yeah,
going to take every piece of it and I'm going to honor it. And that kind of started to shift my thinking to like, okay, there's actually a lot more intentional and like impactful ways for me to protect or to honor and even just to have gratitude for these other creatures.
I feel like that's the number one thing that veganism gave me was the mindfulness around my food, because I am like every single meal, especially when I'm eating meat, because I felt so strongly like I would have bet $100 million I would have never eaten meat again in my life when I was vegan. And so now that I am, it's been just a wild like experience and extremely emotional. But oh my God, I totally lost my thought. Um, wow, it totally went out the window. Oh yeah, the mindfulness around eating meat is every single meal. I am so thankful. Like I thank God every single time I'm eating this animal. And like I will say like, oh, I'm eating a cow instead of like I'm eating beef. And
Yeah.
I think that it also just comes from that programming, but I truly do. And again, I do not eat pork because of my pigs, but yeah, like I truly am just so thankful for what I'm consuming. And I think the world should be more mindful about what we're consuming, because animal or not, there's just so much in the world that we are consuming that we should not be. And yeah, it's like we're given these animals and they're fueling us with what we need. They are lacking all of the toxic ingredients as long as we're getting, good quality meat. And when I'm at home, yeah, I eat all local meat. You will not find, I mean, if the local like farmer market butcher doesn't have a steak, then I will go to the store and look for like a good quality meat. But
Yeah.
when I'm at home, like typically everything is raw dairy, fresh off the farm, everything.
Yes.
And then, yeah, and supporting those local farms, just like you said, like your dollar is your vote to support what you want. And also, like if prices go up, this is just like a side little tangent. If prices go up, support your local businesses. Like they are doing every
Yeah.
single thing that they can to keep their costs low. However, there's never going to be any way for us small businesses to compete with huge, large corporations. But just know the quality that you're getting is so much better, and it is worth the few extra dollars.
Yeah, always. And I mean, the local piece too, whether it's meat or produce, just I
Yeah.
think what's really missed is that we don't think about how far our food comes to get to us. And
Mm-hmm.
especially plants lose from the moment that they come off their vine or their root or whatever, they lose nutrients every day.
Yeah.
So if
And
your
they're
food,
before they're fully vine ripened.
exactly, yes. So if your food's coming from Guatemala,
Yeah.
versus the farmer that's five
Yeah.
blocks down the road or however far they may be, like there's so many pieces to that. And then we look at, kind of the industrialization of food, the demonization of animal fats, animal products, these things. So we can see a direct correlation between cancers and fertility issues and childhood issues. And it's like, it's almost this willful ignorance,
Yes.
of like
Yeah.
these things happened right next to each other. And if we go back about I always say to people, when in doubt, just eat as they did before World War One.
Yeah.
Like go pre-war, pre-engine lubricant, pretending to be salad dressing, pre-Crisco, pre everything in a can, everything in plastic, everything shelf stable. And that's, I mean, that's as a household, that's kind of what we're working towards. But like my great grandmothers, both of them died at almost 100. I think they were 98 and 99 years old.
Wow. Oh
You
my God.
know? Yeah,
That's
these
incredible.
women were like their husbands brought home the animals and they were gutting them and dressing them and cooking them and all their produce came from their garden. And they weren't worried about like glyphosate
Right.
or phthalates or like how is their plastic leaching into this because it's been sitting on a shelf for 6 weeks before it got to me. Um, just all of this madness that now
Yeah.
I feel like we have to do so much work to counteract when it's just so simple. Like
I
we
know. And we have to pay extra for it too.
which is, I know, isn't that something for, and that, I've heard a lot of farmers talk about like to be organic, like there's all these fees and costs that you have to get the certifications. Like you mentioned raw milk, which I am passionate about raw milk. I
Yeah.
would say butter is the most important food group. Raw milk is right there with it. But the local farmer, there's a farmer that's 5 minutes from me that I get my raw milk from, and there's always a little flyer on it that says we don't have these certifications because we can't afford them. But you're welcome to come by the farm anytime. Here's our cows' names. Here's what we
Oh,
do.
that's
It's an
cool.
open, like, come on in. They are pasture raised. This is regenerative. And it's just incredible that it's almost like the burden of Like they have to prove their innocence
Yeah.
versus having to
Well,
prove.
and the government wants us sick. You know, like the world wants us sick because it's funding big pharma and all of that. That's another
Yeah.
rabbit hole that we don't have to get into right now. But so they're making it so complicated for these people to, yeah, like be registered or certified organic and whatever because they want us sick.
Yes, they do. And we can, that's another high priority. We
We
can
can
get
do
into that
another
rabbit hole.
thunder talk on that.
Yeah, we might have to, because that's, I mean, these are probably the top two out of three things I talk about the most.
Yeah.
But it comes from that same place that the original diet shift came from. Like watching just people that I love suffer and die from things that they didn't have to, and go
Yeah.
to the doctor every week, like not exaggerating, like weekly to the doctor. No, we'll change your med or we'll give you this treatment or this, and then just got sicker and sicker and sicker and then died.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
I can't remember what podcast it was, but I was listening to one yesterday. It was Gary Brecka on Sean Ryan, and he was talking about how worldwide the causes of death are like heart disease is number one, and then cancer is number two, and then medical malpractice is number three.
Oh, wow.
Insane.
Yeah.
Insane. That it's like, huh? And then to your point, right? Like if we were spending this time, this money, this, and again, like it's so political, it's so that's the rabbit hole, right? But if that were focused on like local community farms
Mhm.
or, local animals, local whatever, just like even a local education, um, it breaks my heart, and I'll go so far as to say that it's like evil in a sense.
Oh, for sure. I
You know,
agree.
to
And I think one thing also that drives me crazy, and this is a part of the programming, is you see on like Facebook or whatever social media app, and they're like, this is the problem with America. And it shows like a salad, $12, and then a Big Mac, $2, or, something. And it's just like, no, with your Big Mac, that's $2 comes all of these health risks that is not in the price ticket. And then with the salad or the grilled chicken or whatever is the more expensive option, you are investing in your health. Same when you're at the grocery store. You might be spending a couple extra dollars here and there. Sure, it might add up. However, like you said, you saw family members go to the doctor every single week. And not only are they paying most likely a copay and then a copay for your prescription and missing work over and over and over again, it's just like, which one do you want to support? Which one are you prioritizing? And
yeah,
it's just programming.
it's incredible. Yeah, I had a conversation with a woman a few months ago we were at some weekend thing, and she had sat down at like this restaurant next to me for lunch, and we got to talking and whatever. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to do that, but I can't really afford it. I have kids, I have this." And I was like, "That's exactly like if you think you can't afford healthy food today,
Yeah.
wait until you get the bill for cancer treatment when your
Yeah.
kids aren't even out of high school yet.
Hmm.
When you have to look at your kids and say, Mommy won't be here
Yeah.
anymore because of those choices that I made." Or to your point, I always say that like 25, $40 copays, that stuff adds up. That,
Yeah.
that's the difference between, or like growing up, my love my family so much, but they were very conditioned, and they would always say, well, we can't afford these things, but we always had cookies. We always had ice cream. There was
Yep.
always muffins. And it's like, okay, well, that $15 a week that you spent on sweets, that could have gone to grass-fed meat or
Yeah.
pasture-raised meat or eggs or an organic vegetable versus a conventionally grown one. And that's another piece that growing up, I was always told I was allergic to fresh fruits and vegetables, which is
Right.
like crazy. How's that happen?
Yeah.
When I started buying my own food, which was a 16, 17 time for me, I bought organic produce and didn't have the reaction. So what would happen is I would eat conventional produce and my throat would swell, my mouth would get really itchy, my lips, my tongue, everything would swell up. But it never happened with organic. And that was the light bulb for me about like, this is the pesticides, like this is
Yeah.
glyphosate, this is like this is, and that was, I mean, what a shame the first 17 years of my life, I'd been given like canned fruit in corn syrup, you know,
Wow.
and that
Yeah.
was meeting the fruit requirement, again, like parents, teachers, everybody coming from the best place, really trying to be helpful, doing
Yeah.
damage. And all it was that simple shift. And even now, like I try to get that message across to my family, like, well, it's more expensive. But when you actually like look at it, it's like, um, I just did this the other day with a client. The organic bananas, I think, were 50 cents more than the conventional ones.
Yeah.
Like, what was your plan for that 50 cents?
Right.
So it's just, Yeah, it's
Anytime someone says I can't afford, I tell them, say, I don't prioritize because that really is like such a perspective shift, I feel like. And it's like, can you actually not afford it? Or like, where is that money going to that you're saying you can't? Like you said, 50 cents. Like, what are you doing with that 50 cents? Even if it's $2, like, are you going to go to Starbucks tomorrow? There's your $2, you know? So it's like, instead of I can't afford, just shift it and be like, I don't prioritize. And then that like just opens the mind up of like, actually, I
yeah.
think I will, buy the organic versus whatever.
Yeah, I love that. I think I'm
So, okay, so you said that whenever you went vegan, you did like solve some of your health issues and then it started to like you started having them again. So can you like share with me what things that like you overcame and then things that were brought back in as you were vegan?
Yeah, so the my asthma went away, my eczema that I had my whole life went away. Every summer I was allergic to grass, so all summer long I would get these patches all over my skin and like flaky, dry skin, had hair issues. Again, my periods were crazy. Like sometimes they'd be 2 weeks, sometimes it would take 45 days. Super painful, like stuck in bed, sobbing, crying. I used to get headaches all the time, like to the point where I couldn't go to school because I was just like I couldn't even open my eyes. My head hurt so bad.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely like I think what we call like it's odd to say about myself, but definitely like I had behavioral issues in the sense that like I was such a mean girl. Like the movie Me. Like I would go out of my way to just be terrible to people. Um, and I think I mean that had to do with more than just my health, but I noticed as I changed those foods and wasn't eating a super inflammatory diet of, again, grain-fed meat that was pumped full of hormones. So that explained a lot of, just like the menstrual issues that I was having. We know grain-fed is full of omega-6, which is super inflammatory, versus grass-fed, which is full of omega-3, which is, that's actually what we're going for there. That's the beneficial fats. Um, I think just naturally my sugar intake went down because I wasn't eating a bunch of condiments that were full of sugar. I wasn't slapping things between bread that was really sugary and full of, the enriched whatever, which is again another rabbit hole. Um, so those things started going away. But as more meat replacements came out, because again, all I did was take meat out. So at that point, I was eating a lot of vegetables. Like I'd have like rice and vegetables and an avocado, lots of chickpeas. I really like took meat out and had mostly whole foods. And then as that progressed, there were more and more options of the processed replacements or processed vegetarian or vegan dishes. And that started to bring those omega-6s really through seed oils back into my diet, a lot more sugar back into the diet, a lot more refined carbohydrates and the enriched carbohydrates. And those problems started to come back.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same as mine. Like I was vegan or I was vegetarian for a year and I really had no intention of going vegan. And when I went vegetarian, I don't think it solved any of my issues because I was like heavy on dairy, pizza, like carbs. And then when I went vegan, I would always say I'm a vegan that doesn't like vegetables. And because of growing up, I never liked vegetables. But then my taste buds like really started changing and I was heavy on the vegetables. And it was within like weeks that I had IBS, acne, I mean, my face was just puffy, like inflamed. And so within a couple weeks, my IBS completely went away. And I did lose some weight and then, but yeah, also veganism wasn't that popular then. There was not all of these options. And so I was forced to eat, more veggies than I probably ever have in my life. And as all of these new vegan items came out, I was just going ham on these, Beyond Burgers, the Impossible Burgers, like all the fake vegan meat. And I was vegan for I think it was like 9 years. And yeah, like the last few years was so rough. And I pretty much introduced every single symptom that I solved back into my lifestyle, but worse. And I was not supplementing anything except omegas when I was vegan. So the first blood work that I got I was clinically deficient in everything. He was like, I don't even know how you're awake, like talking to me right now. And yeah, it was like it would take me almost 2 hours to get out of bed in the morning. Like
Mm.
the energy levels that I lacked were just insane. It's like hard to even describe. Um, but yeah, it was like uphill going great, and then it just plummeted back downhill. Um, okay, so you kind of got into this, but tell me whenever you felt like you needed to add meat in again. Was it like lack of energy? You were experiencing your symptoms again?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me that I finally, when I was like real with myself, I was like, okay, so when I am feeling the lowest, I'm craving these things. And I was like, is this the chicken or the egg, right? Like, am I
Mhm.
sad so I want cheese, or am I depleted because I don't have these nutrients and so I'm sad?
Yeah,
And that, I tend to think that way with things after they've set on me for a while. I don't go
that
right
is
there. I'm
such
not.
a good point.
Yeah, so and that was when kind of the like sneaking and things like that. And then there was a point, the last job that I had towards the end, it was just I was in sales for a long time. I sold a lot of different things. And towards the end of this last job, I felt like daily I was just selling my soul. So I, for my lunch break every day, would go to this restaurant nearby. And I'd have a glass of wine and a salmon salad, and it just would like make me feel so much better. And there was a lot of times throughout where I was like, okay, fish isn't meat, so it's not that bad. Like I kind of had that facade, like I was pretending that it was, somehow fit into a vegan diet.
Yeah.
Um, but it would always make me feel better. And then those little pieces where I'm like, okay, so is this just like an emotional support thing, like sad ice cream, or again, is it a deficiency and I'm fulfilling that deficiency and then I feel better?
Yeah.
And then I would notice on those days that I did have that salad, like my run after work would be a couple seconds faster or minutes faster or something like that. So putting two and two together, where I was like, okay, this is protein, like I'll have more chickpeas, I'll have another smoothie, whatever. But then when I did have more chickpeas or another pea protein smoothie, like I'd be bloated, I'd be tired. Like this isn't one for one,
Yeah.
you know? And then Joshua came into my life and it just like I finally, honestly, it was like I was finally safe to admit that I desired those things and just went right back into it. And everything for the first kind of 6 months we were together, I was like peaking in strength goals in my run times. Just everything was better. Just way more energy, libido was better. Everything was just better. And then about 6 months in, I was in a car accident. So that changed a lot of things for me. But that period of time was such a stark difference from the prior 6 years. Uh,
Yeah.
that I don't think I'd ever, there's no convincing me now I can, so
I would never be vegan again.
no. Yeah, I still have bouts where I'm like, don't show me a vegetable, like just give me the steak and the butter
Yeah.
and leave me with it. Like I still have that, like, that little bit of rebellion and resentment of I feel like I
Yeah.
wasted so much time and energy. But it wasn't because I learned and like I said, now I have those different baselines and just sort of like an awareness of
Yeah.
what my body feels like and what does and doesn't work. And I do feel like my conviction now, and that's why I say I feel far less vulnerable now because I tried those things. Like I know for myself. And so
Yep.
no matter how good your speech is or your emotional propaganda or whatever, like it's just not going to get me because I did it. I tried it,
Yeah.
So I do feel fortunate for that.
Yeah, totally. So was it hard on you mentally at all? Like I think you did it more for your health. So there, like for me, it was pure emotional. But did you have any of that like emotional piece there?
I think honestly, I think I developed emotional piece as like as a backbone for the health piece because I was the only vegetarian person that I knew when I was. My
Yeah.
family would not let up. Like every meal we had together, they'd be like, "Oh, you think you're better than us? You think you know more than us?" Like it was just this constant berating. And it got to the point where I would just like thanks. There was a few Thanksgivings where I was like, "I'm just gonna fast today." Like that's my way of giving thanks is I'll come to dinner, but I'm just not going to eat anything. So you can't pick apart my plate. I remember my grandma, rest her soul, she meant well, but she would like try to sneak, like she'd just like drop a piece of chicken on my plate when I, or something like that. Like it was like so forceful. So I think I developed that emotional story of like, well, there's this, this, and this because I couldn't communicate health to people who didn't prioritize that. but I knew that
Mhm.
these people had compassion and that they had emotion. So I started to kind of shift my why to justify to others, so that they would like leave me alone because the headache
Yeah.
just was not enough. But then you pull on the heartstrings and they're like, okay, well, for some reason that's more admirable than just like, I don't want to be sick.
Yeah.
So I don't know how sincere it was versus like how much I just kind of stepped into it and then convinced myself that that was what was important to me so that
Yeah.
I would not have pushback all the time.
Yeah. I feel like that's one of my most liberating just like feelings of giving up on, not even giving up, but like just stopping veganism was all the comments, and even like preparing my own meal for every single thing that I would go to, no matter if I was going to a picnic or a holiday or birthday party. I would, find out what the menu was, and then I would make my own version of it. So, one, to kind of blend in a little bit more so people weren't picking apart my plate or asking me, like, what are you eating? Like, or ew, that's, like whatever. And yeah, just like that freedom is crazy. Feels
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, for sure. And but I think too it's so powerful to consider. Like for me towards the end, I remember the last vegan Thanksgiving dinner that I had. There was like 15 vegan dishes on the table, but all of them were imitating meat or dairy dishes. And I was like, I want this so bad. Like, I wish this was mac and cheese and not
Yeah.
nutritional yeast and like cashews. Like, I'm like, I'm trying
Yeah.
so hard to get these things and like, again, pretend. And when I look back on it, there were so many things that I was kind of just pretending made sense,
Oh, yeah.
but when that finally set in for me, but that was such a stark difference because in the beginning, again, I just took it all out.
Yeah.
But once it got to the place where I was replacing it and still pursuing like the imitation, I was like, okay, clearly I want these things. Or I
Yeah.
would have spent 4 hours making cheese out of,
Yeah.
whatever it takes to make
Yeah.
it out of. Um, so I think realizing that was really helpful too, to just be like, okay,
Yeah. That's so interesting. That would be like the difference between like my extreme emotional journey was I always loved meat. I never gave it up because I didn't like it. I gave it up purely emotionally. And then so every single part of my journey was imitating meat. Like I wanted to eat what everyone else was eating, but I didn't want to eat the actual meat just because I was emotional about it.
yeah,
And then and I never once missed it ever until probably, well, I think it was last spring, and this was after I added in eggs and raw dairy. And then there was one day I literally thought in my head, I want a steak. Like I'm craving a steak. And I was just like, oh my God, I didn't tell anyone for like a while. Cause I was just like, how could I like want that? And then finally, yeah, I was like, okay, clearly my body is telling me like you are needing something. And every time like I added eggs in and then I felt great, but I would like plateau. And then I added the raw dairy in, I felt great. And then I would plateau. And as soon as my naturopath told me like you're still deficient, like I was getting blood work, and I was just like, as soon as he said I was still deficient, in my head, then I felt like that plateau almost like plummeted again to where I was. And then, and I think it was kind of like mental, but I felt like I lacked energy again and like just lacking everything. And then finally I was like, okay, clearly if I'm craving meat and I'm adding all of this in and I'm not like to the best that I can be, it's like time to add in the meat.
yeah. How about it? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I mean, it all resonates so much. And it's like, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about just even, I used to try to convince myself that like a vegan diet was less expensive, or all those things. But as you're saying that, it's like, I think about the diet that I have now. And in the morning, I have like beef and eggs. And
Yeah.
I'm good until dinner, like full of energy, full of strength, full of vigor and vitality. And then for dinner, like we'll have like salmon and, so like a goat cheese. I think that's what I'm going to do today. And maybe like a green bean, but I
Mhm.
eat substantially less food
Yeah.
than I did
Same.
then, and it's like I think about the grocery bills that I had at one time, in that relationship that I was in in the vegan relationship. It was a household of vegans. There was five of us, and we were
Wow.
spending like $700 a week on
Well,
produce.
yeah.
It's like that's crazy. That's insane. And again, with the emphasis on organic, right? Because
Yeah.
like I equate glyphosate with grain fed.
Yeah.
I think in one of your other pods, you were talking about how difficult it is to travel and find
Mm.
higher quality meat. And that was where I was at. So it was actually like super expensive, more expensive than eating meat, honestly, to make sure every piece of produce that was in my house was organic and as local as possible and, fresh enough to do something with, and like which ones can be versatile because you don't want to eat the same thing
Right.
every day. And it was just the mental gymnastics that, kind of went
Yeah,
into that. And
that's
now,
hard for it.
like back in August, we bought a quarter cow,
Yeah.
just finishing it up. And like again, from the sustainability argument of veganism, right? Because just last week I cooked one of the prime rib roasts that we had. I roasted that in the slow cooker with some vegetables, right? And that ended up being like 5 meals. And then after that, I took the bones out and I baked them in the oven and pulled the marrow that was left out. So now I've got marrow. And then I took the broth that was left without the meat and we had ramen. I added chicken to it. And then I
Mhm.
took those bones and I keep all of my vegetable scraps. This started in my vegan time. All the stuff you would throw away, I keep it. Boiled all the bones and the scraps and some chicken bones down into a bone broth. So we have a sip of bone broth in the morning, which makes you feel amazing. Or when I do cook a grain, I cook it in the bone broth. Or like for our dogs, I cook all their food, cook that in the bone broth. And it's like there's this one little cut of meat did like 15 different things,
Yeah, that's awesome.
and it's just, and when we get the cow, I get the suet. So I take that suet and I render it down and either cook with it or make skincare with it. We get all the bones, we get all the scraps, and that becomes pet food. That becomes, like there's so many ways to use this thing. And if I were buying onions, I could use none of it for my dog. I could maybe skincare. I'm sure there is something I could do with an onion for skincare. But it's just like the ability to, and I think this goes back to the gratitude piece of showing gratitude and reverence to the animal,
Yeah.
um and like not wasting a single piece of it. And they actually, like, I drive my fiance crazy, my mom too. She called me a what did she say, a depression era old lady a couple weeks ago. She's like, when do you throw things away? And I'm like, when they're done.
Yeah.
Like, I just keep
Yeah.
going. But that's the beauty, and I feel like it's such, honestly, like it's a gift from God that he put these things here, and one cow, I can do 20 things with that cow
Yeah.
and just sustain, like get my whole family's sustenance from this one animal. That, and if we're raising it ourselves, which is our goal, can care for, can give the best life, can give tons of love, and save it from a natural death, which would have been starving to death, freezing to death, or being mauled by another animal.
Yeah.
Like just that whole cycle of like sincere. I know there's this whole like coexist thing, but to me, that is the sincerity of coexisting, is like being a steward and caring for that animal and
Yeah.
then giving it a peaceful exit and then having so much reverence for it afterwards. Um, and each section of the way having that gratitude for it and honoring it. Um, I find so much more power in that than just I'm not going to eat that animal because I love it.
Right. Yeah. I would agree now. And I can't believe 10 years later, I can't believe I'm agreeing, but totally. Well, I feel like that was the perfect end to our episode. That was like so beautiful and just so mindful of everything that we really talked about. Do you have anything else that you want to add?
On the vegan piece, it's actually really funny. I haven't been vegan for so long. Now I have a skincare brand that is it's based in beef tallow. Our flagship product was a beef tallow lotion, but another gift from the cow, right? So it is so nutrient dense, vitamins A, E, D, and K, and everything we put on our skin goes into our bloodstream. So these are beef tallow based, and then there's a few purposefully chosen, always organic oils and essential oils that go along with it. But we also have, we do have some vegan products. We have a face serum, some different hair growth serums, but every single thing totally organic, close to its natural form as possible. Never a preservative, never a gum, a thickener, none of that. My rule of thumb, which can really kind of go back to my vegan days, I think when I developed this, was if I wouldn't put it in my mouth, I don't put it on my skin, because
Mhm.
everything we put on our skin goes into our bloodstream.
Yeah.
So all of that intent and mindfulness that was kind of developed in that phase has now bled over into this business that we have now. So it's skin, face, hair, and pet care. That's the number two, sisters, puregoods.com. Um, and this whole heart that I poured out in this has gone into that. So I do think it's so funny, having been vegan for so long now, to have an animal-based business, but this is the path, this is where it's led me.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, you hear. And then where can they find you? So I'll link your website for sure, and then Instagram, TikToks, like anything that you want to share with how people can find you.
Yeah, Instagram and Facebook is the same thing. The number two, Sisters Pure Goods. And then our YouTube is two, Sis Pure Goods.
Got
And we are just now, as of this week, we just are starting to launch more long form content. So we do have like a non-toxic kind of lifestyle coaching product, which is it's not like business or anything like that, but it's a lot of these things that I've talked about, like what is an omega-3 versus an omega-6? What are parabens and phthalates, and why is it important that we don't rub them all over ourselves? So a lot of the things that we were dealing with one-on-one with clients on that, it's a higher ticket cost. And my heart is to kind of just give that away. So that's what we're shifting to in the YouTube, is to take that curriculum. And the questions that I get the most on that are the things that people bring as the biggest obstacles, and to break those down on the channel. So keep an eye out for that at 2 Sis Pure Goods on YouTube. That's going to be coming soon.
Okay, sweet. Well, I'll link it all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for joining me. I had so much fun talking to you and connecting and finally getting to connect.
Yeah, how about it? I know it's such a pleasure. I'm so grateful to get to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'd love to do it again. We can dive into that big pharma talk, because that's
Yeah, I would love
that's
to.
high on my list. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good one.